Now, I'll be teaching you a strategy that I use. I personally use this strategy all the time in dishing out signals in my community and trading personally. Now, it's called the pivot point. Many of you might have heard the pivot. Some people call it pivot, some call it pivot, but I call it pivot. All right. Now, it's an indicator, and in this video, I'm not just going to be using the pivot. I don't use the pivot alone. I use the pivot plus the trend line, plus my trend line. So in this video, I'm teaching you how I snipe perfect entries using the pivot point or the pivot indicator and my trend line. All right, let's head over to my screen. All right, guys, now we are on my screen. Without wasting much time, um, this is the strategy that I use. This is the strategy that SpiritFX use, and this is the strategy I use in sending signals in my Telegram group where I have over 15,000 subscribers. And I can tell you for a fact that this my strategy works. All right, I'm going to be showing you. Look at this. We entered at this point. Let me show you another entry again on GBP. No, I didn't use that strategy on GBP USD, but it's still kind of like the same. I will explain this later. I use the strategy here on um I use the strategy here on Australian dollar and United States dollars. You can see it worked here. Let's check. I use it on USD CHF, and as you can see, it gives perfect entry. So you might ask, Mr. Henry, what is this strategy? What is this strategy? Teach us. It's very, very simple. Just trend line and pivot. If you check my trading view, I have only one indicator. As you can see it here, pivot point. It's called pivot point. Is it pivot or pivot? So let me switch it on. Now my pivot point is on. All right. Now these are the lines you're seeing here. These are the lines you're seeing here. P stand for the pivot point. Arrow stand for resistance. S stand for support. All right. So I use trend line and pivot point. Shikina, finish. That is all. Now the trend line tells me the direction of the market. All right. So let me clear off all these things on my screen so we can start again so you would understand it. All right. So let me just clear all this. Now this is it. Let me switch off the pivot point so you see how it looks like. Now look at this is the main chart without nothing. So now let's turn on our pivot points. Let me show you how I entered that trade. Now this was where price was at that time, meaning price was at it's be around this support level. So I use my trend line, as you can see, trend line here, and I dragged my trend from here. Price was around, I think price was around here, yes, as at that time. All right. So I noticed price touched around this support, went back up. All right. This is my pivot point. Came back, touched the pivot point, went back up again. It's trying to let you know that the buyers are strong in the market. Came back again down here. Just be following my mouse. Came back around this pivot point again. Still bounced back up. All right. So I knew, okay, this is going to be a bullish trend. So I drew my trend line. Then I think price was at around this point as at that time, around this point here. Then I set my entry here. All right. Then I was looking for, I always use 20 pips stop loss, 20 pips stop loss, just below my trend line. Do you understand? So my stop loss is going to be below my trend line. Then I look for 80 pips. That's what I do. That's 1 to 3 risk to reward. I look for 80 pips. And if you check, most of the time it hits my take profit. Now, this is just the strategy. Your pivot point is the point you are looking at. Your trend line tells you the direction of the market, and you're waiting for price to come down and touch your pivot point. Finish. Let's look for another explanation. Let's use EURUSD. Now, thank God this is a downtrend. As you can see, let me switch on the pivot points. It's on right now. What are you seeing here? Let me remove this thing so you can see the P showing. Now, these are pivot points. As you can see, if you check it beside this blue bullish candle, you see the P there. That's the pivot point. So let me take this back up there. All right. So price was around here. I think as at the, was it here? Was at as at the time? Yes, price was around there as at the time I drew my trend line. I first of all used my trend line to know the direction of the market. So I knew okay, it's a downward trend because this was the first high. This is another high. All right. Price was around here. But if you check it, once price comes down below this pivot point, it comes back up. Before you know it, it comes back down. That means the sellers are kind of like strong in this market. The trend line has already even told us that the sellers are strong. So once price comes down below this pivot point, it tends to want to go back up. Buyers are trying to push the market back, but the sellers are very, 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 very strong. So once you notice that when price comes down to the pivot point, it goes back up. It comes down again, it goes back up. You notice, okay, the sellers are strong in the market. Aside from that, your trend line still tells you that the sellers are strong because price is not yet breaking this trend. All right. So what you want to do is you set your entry around the pivot points and wait for price to get there again. Look at again, if you check this is 20 pips. I use 20 pips stop loss. My stop loss must just be above the candlestick, the trend line rather. And as you can see, we look at making 80 pips in the market. This is 87 pips. And let's just take it. Let's say this is 70. Already price at 78 pips. So if it was here, I would have even almost hit my take profit. So let's check another um entry. Let's use AUD. Was it AUD you used? Okay, let's use AUD USD. Look at this is another sweet uh, uh, indication of the analysis working out or the strategy. Let's switch on our pivot point. I've switched on the pivot point. Look at now. I noticed okay, this was, and mind you, I'm always using the 15 minutes time frame. This was a major high. All right. So I would drag my trend line from this major high down. So I'm looking for pivot points. So this is a pivot point here. This place is a pivot point. You can see this is the pivot point. So you will notice as price from here came down, this was where I entered the trade, just around here. As price came down, tried going back up, but it couldn't, came down again, tried going back up. I noticed that, okay, yes, because sometimes no strategy is 100% accurate. Price might come back up here, continue going up and break this trend line. We all know no strategy is 100% accurate. You understand? So, but this is the strategy. You draw your trend line down just a little bit around your pivot point here. Then you put your entry on the pivot point itself. So let me just delete this and bring the entry back. Put your entry on the pivot point itself around here. All right. So let's say before you entered, price was around this place, dancing around, coming up, coming down, coming up, coming down. Just put your entry around here because your trend line has already shown you that it's a downtrend. Okay. Then you put your entry around here. Then you look for making 80 pips and risking just 20 pips. All right. Something just above the trend line, as you can see, that's 20 pips. So if you have entered this trade also, you'd have also come out in profit. Let's see if we can do another strategy. Do we have NZD USD? Did I take this trade? I think I did. No, I did not. I just marked my trend line. As if you notice now, look at this is the pivot point. All right. I marked my trend line from here. Yes, just for tutorial purpose, you can also mark your trend line from let's say a lower, is this a lower low? Yes, sometimes I mistake that lower low, lower high, lower high, lower low, but you get what I'm saying. From this low you can drag it and drag it up towards this direction. Let's say this is the strategy we want to use, dragging our trend line from below. Then you put your sell around here because you're waiting for price to break the trend line. Let's look for 20 pips. 20 pips. This is 20 pips. All right. So this is your trend, right? This is the trend. This is a lower low, I think. This is a lower high, I think. Yes. So once you drag your trend line across the candle, then wait for your candlestick to break this trend line. If it breaks it, if it comes down, because if you check it here, it started from here, it touched it here, it did not break. Then it went up, it came down, and it broke it. All right. It breaking it here is an indication that price wants to take another direction. Do you understand? So you can actually still use this strategy to draw your trend line. But normally, the strategy I use is, let me take away this trend line. The strategy I use is just drawing my trend line from this higher high here, all right, down like this, just like this. This is how I do mine. Okay. Then I'll wait for price to either come back here and touch the pivot point. This is a pivot point. So the pivot point is my entry point. It is my sniper entry point. That is what I use. Now, get it straight. It may not always work all the time, like I said. All right. It may not always work all the time. So this is my pivot point. So I'm just going to draw my trend line from here. Just look for a major high, then from there draw my trend line coming down towards a pivot point. Now this is my pivot point. Understand? So let's say even price was as at this point. Let's just take this forward. Let's say price was at this at this point. Then you draw your trend line. All right. You've drawn your trend line. You're waiting for price to come back up to touch anywhere around this pivot point. Then you put your entry there. You would make that your 80 pips. If you check it, the 80 pips is always very, 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 very feasible. Like you will definitely hit the 80 pips. Look at, as you can see. So this is just the simple way I trade personally. All right. I don't do any other magic. Now, there are other traders that trade with price action. Beautiful, it works. Smart money concept, beautiful, it works. All right. But this is how I trade. Now, when they say what's that word called? Mentorship. Sir, I want you to mentor me. I want you to mentor me. What does mentorship means? It means you want to learn what the person is actually using, the strategy the person is actually using to get the result he's getting. And it means you've actually seen this person's result and you know that this person is actually doing well. 70, 60, 70, 80% of the signals he sends are always positive. You understand? So you want to learn what the person knows. That is just it. All right. So everybody has their own way of trading, and this is my own best way. This is one of, no professional has a particular way of trading. This is just one of my best ways of trading. All right, guys. If you have any question, you can drop your question. I'll be willing to answer you. This is just it is as simple as ABCD. Just your trend line and your pivot points. All right. Your trend line tells you the direction of the market. You already know, okay, this is a downtrend. All right. So what I'm looking for is let price come back and touch the pivot point, and I'm entering a sell. Then when you notice for an uptrend, let me see an uptrend. Which uptrend did you use? For example, I think okay, USD CHF. Yes. So when price is on an uptrend like this, from down here, you already drew your uptrend. You're waiting for price to just come back and touch a pivot point around that uptrend, and you take a buy. All right. And if you take your buy, you are sure of getting your 80 pips. That's just it. It's as simple as that. And I just feel I should show you guys this. Aside from the pivot point, getting entries from the pivot point, I want to show you this. You can also get entries from your support level or your resistance level. All right. If you notice right now, let me crop this, let it go inside a little. If you notice, I marked my trend line from here. As you can see, look at it from here. I marked my trend line from here. All right. To this point. This was where to this point. This was where price was as around this part. Let me show you. Let's go to my Telegram group because I sent this signal. And right now we are already at how many pips profit? Let me see. Let me calculate it with this stuff. We are at 60 pips profit. All right. So let me go to my Telegram group. Let me show you where we entered from. Let me show you where we entered from. So this is my Telegram group. Now this is the signal. Look at it. As you can see, can you see where price was as at the time? I said buy BTC at 42254. All right. Now, as you can see, we already this signal was sent, and as you can see, let's check comment section. Let's see. Look at now, sniper entry. I was sending results in the comment section to show them how far the signal has gone. As you can see, $6,225 that I made from this signal, from that entry. Look at, let's see if we would see other people's screenshot. This is only trade I made, but the legend SpiritFX do show me blah blah blah. Okay, made $9. Let's go up and see what people are saying. $7, $6, $1, that's like, let's say $4. This is 1,500 naira, but this is in naira. Now this guy made big money. This is 1,103 United States dollars. So to let you know that the analysis works. So this is a live proof. All right. This was the signal I sent. Look at my Telegram group, 4,500 subscribers. So it was seen by 2,168 people. All right. So, and the ones that took the trade. So let's go back to the trade so you see how it's doing. Can you see? It is called perfection. So how did I take this trade? What was my what did I see? As you can see, I dragged my trend line towards this direction, and I noticed that, as you can see, S1 here. Let me drag this thing down so you see it clearly. S1, look at it, S1 here, showing support one. Then when I dragged my trend line, I noticed my trend line came out beneath the support. Do you understand? So meaning I could place an entry here. It doesn't need to be on the pivot point. Entries doesn't necessarily have to be on the pivot points. Your own is your trend line. Once you draw your trend line, is your trend line, if it's an upward trend, is your trend line below a support zone, which is this? This is a support zone. If your trend line tallies with a support zone and you notice price is actually getting towards that support zone, you can take an entry there. Do you understand? Because, but if you notice, I was always talking about pivot point, pivot point, pivot point, pivot point. Yes, it not only pivot point, it can also work for support and resistance. So let's say it is on a downward trend. You draw your trend line. Let's just say you draw your trend line like this. Let's say probably this is just for an example. Let's say probably you draw your trend line like this. All right. Now, as you can see, this is a resistance zone, and you notice this price here candle gets towards this direction, and your trend line is above it. You can place a sell here. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a pivot point. All right. So this is just a simple explanation. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a pivot point. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Your trend line is the most important thing. When you draw your trend line, like I drew this one right now, if you notice, it is on a support zone. It tallies with a support zone, and price was actually around this place before. If you check the main entry, look at it. Look at where price was. This is my Telegram group. Price was actually coming down to that uh, support zone. So I said, okay, this could also serve as an entry. Doesn't necessarily have to be a pivot point or from a pivot point. Do you understand what I'm saying now, guys? So that is just it. That's how simple it is. Draw your trend line. Where is your trend line telling you? Where is it showing? If it's on a pivot point, that's where your trend line takes you towards where price is. It's fine. You can still put your entry around here. Like, let's say for instance, I didn't take this trade. Now let me remove all this. Now. Okay, let's say Mr. Henry, you did not take this trade, and this is how the chart is. What would you do in this situation? First of all, let me even remove this trend line. Let's say I want to analyze this market from scratch. What would I do? I'll first of all get the direction of the market, the trend of the market. So I can use this, put my trend line here, drag it further forward just to know what is happening, to see it clearly. Then what I would do is I might put my entry, either here, probably maybe price might, let me close this. Let me use this instead. Probably price might go like this, come back here, touch this trend, and continue going up. So I might put my entry here. Okay. Now this is me just trading with trend line alone. So I might put my entry here. Okay, and drag it this way. Do you understand? So, but if I would want to train with trend line and pivot using pivot point, now let's clear this because pivot point comes with support and resistance, as you know. Let's clear this. So, if I want to take this trade based on this using this pivot analysis, so I might just put my entry here instead because this is already a pivot line. So, there's every tendency that price may not come back to this your trend line. All right. There's every tendency that price may not come back to this your trend line because this is already a pivot point. Look at the pivot line here. So price might just come back to do this. Price might just come back to do this. Tap this pivot point, then continue to go upward. All right. So that might just be what would happen because it has crossed this pivot line. Do you understand? So give and take, even if it doesn't do, it doesn't tap the pivot point and continue going up, and it does this instead, and it does this instead, I will still not be afraid. Why? Because my stop loss is below the trend line. My stop loss is below the trend line. So I will still not be afraid. So even if it doesn't do, even if it doesn't do this, touch the pivot and go up, and instead it does this second one, comes down to touch this trend line and still go back up, I'm still safe because my stop loss is well enough. Have given my stop loss enough room to breathe. Okay, so this is just you trading with trend line and pivot. Pivot comes with, if you install the pivot point and indicator, it comes with a resistance, a support, and the pivot point itself. So, like I said earlier, you don't necessarily need to allow price to only be on the pivot point before you take your entries. Like I use this as an example, this BTC USD. I drew my trend line and I noticed that this was a support zone, and I put my entry here. And when price got there, immediately it bought and it's giving us over 60 pips. So that is just it. I don't know if you have questions you can ask.